What's up, Bengals fans? Cincinnati has been busy. Yesterday, the team made 5 roster moves in total, and then added another one this morning. We're breaking all of that down for you right here. But before we dive into the latest Bengals news, make sure to subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a single update. Now, let's move on to the big story. The Bengals have been shuffling the roster, including bringing Mike Pennell up to the 53-man squad, exactly the kind of depth move this team needed in the trenches. A few more practice squad adjustments were made as well, while another player was lost in the shuffle. On top of that, new details have come out about Trey Hendrickson's contract, details that could give Cincinnati a real advantage if they decide to use the franchise tag and keep him around for the 2026 season. The Bengals roster shuffle continues, and it's been an eventful stretch. Lucas Patrick was officially placed on injured reserve, which means Cincinnati will be without him for at least 4 games. That's a tough loss for the offensive line, especially after the glimpses we saw of his impact early in the season. To counter that move, the Bengals elevated veteran defensive tackle Mike Pennell to the 53-man roster, while also adding 2 defensive ends, Miles Cole and Isaiah Foskey, to the practice squad. At the same time, they parted ways with defensive end Isaiah Thomas, and wide receiver Isaiah Williams was picked up by the New York Jets. That leaves the door open for yet another potential signing in the coming days. What's interesting here is the ripple effect. These transactions not only reshape the depth chart but also raise new questions about the offensive line. Patrick looked solid in the limited snaps he played, and the run game seemed to flow better with him on the field compared to when Dalton Risner stepped in. That's something the coaching staff will be watching closely, because if the run game stalls early in the season, it could become a bigger issue than people expect. If we're being real here, the Bengals' offensive line depth is already walking a fine line. Right now, you've got Jalen Rivers and Cody Ford as your main depth pieces, and outside of that, there's not much left to lean on. That leaves Cincinnati with only 3 true backup linemen, and for a team that has dealt with offensive line issues year after year, that's a scary thought. The situation feels eerily similar to where the Bengals were before the Dalton Risner signing. Risner brought a sense of security, but with Lucas Patrick now heading to injured reserve, that comfort has disappeared almost overnight. And here's the bigger concern: what happens if Risner or Dylan Fairchild go down? Let's not forget, Risner has a track record of being banged up. Since entering the league back in 2017, he's managed to play over 900 snaps in just 3 of those 8 seasons. More often than not, injuries have forced him off the field. That's not the kind of reliability you want when you're already razor-thin on the interior. Now, with Patrick sidelined, it means Ford and Rivers are essentially 1 snap away from being thrust into extended action. Can they hold up against the physical defenses Cincinnati will face this year? That's the real test. Because if the protection collapses or the run game struggles, it puts even more pressure on Joe Burrow and the passing attack to carry the load, and we've seen how dangerous that can be when the line can't hold. This isn't panic mode yet, but the red flags are there. The Bengals can't afford another setback in the trenches, and you have to wonder if another roster move might be coming sooner rather than later. If I had to choose right now, I'd probably feel a little more comfortable with Jalen Rivers stepping in over Cody Ford. Rivers showed some flashes in the preseason finale, moving well and holding his ground. But let's be real, that performance came against backups, not the kind of starters he'd face in meaningful games. The difference in competition is night and day. Jackson Kirkland is another name worth mentioning. He's still sitting on the practice squad, but in a pinch, I could absolutely see the Bengals calling him up on game day as extra insurance. Still, it feels like Cincinnati is right back where it started before Dalton Risner was added. With Lucas Patrick now on injured reserve, the margin for error is razor thin. One more injury in that unit, and the Bengals could be staring at a serious problem up front. And while the offensive line is a major talking point, there's another storyline heating up that could shape the team's future: Trey Hendrickson. Contract rumors and whispers about his long-term future in Cincinnati have been swirling, and the latest details give us even more to think about. Now, let's shift gears to one of the biggest storylines around the Bengals, Trey Hendrickson. Fresh details have surfaced about his recent contract adjustment, and they could play a major role in shaping Cincinnati's long-term plans. Here's what stands out. While Hendrickson received a raise, there was no tag clause included in the deal. That might seem like a small detail, but it's actually a huge advantage for the Bengals. Why? Because it keeps the franchise tag firmly on the table for 2026. At first, many questioned why the Bengals would restructure instead of simply letting Hendrickson play out his deal and move on. But this wrinkle changes everything. By leaving that option open, Cincinnati has positioned itself to keep one of the NFL's premier pass rushers without committing to a massive long-term extension right away. Think about it. Hendrickson has been the heartbeat of the Bengals' defensive front, piling up sacks and consistently wrecking plays in the backfield. Losing a player of that caliber would instantly create a huge hole. But with the franchise tag in play, the team now has leverage. They can keep him locked in for another season while weighing the bigger financial picture. It's a smart move, and honestly, it signals just how valuable Hendrickson is to what Lou Anarumo wants to do defensively. The Bengals know that their chances of competing at the highest level are much stronger with Hendrickson chasing down quarterbacks in stripes. Yesterday, salary cap expert Joe Corey dropped some eye-opening details about Trey Hendrickson's adjusted contract, and Bengals fans should be paying attention. Here's the breakdown. With $13 million in new bonus proration, Hendrickson's 2025 cap hit now climbs to just over $25 million. On top of that, the deal includes a void year in 2026. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For franchise tag purposes, the number jumps to around $30.2 million. That's 120% of his prior year's salary. And while that figure sounds massive, it's actually right in the ballpark of what Hendrickson has been pushing for all along: security for at least 2 seasons. This was the sticking point during negotiations. The Bengals only wanted to guarantee 1 year, while Hendrickson pushed for 2. What this adjustment does is give both sides a path to meet in the middle. If Cincinnati decides to apply the tag, Hendrickson essentially gets the guaranteed money he was looking for, without the team locking itself into a long-term deal just yet. The real kicker here is that there's no no-tag clause. That's huge leverage for the Bengals. It means the front office still controls Hendrickson's future, even if the narrative outside the building was that he might simply walk after this season. In fact, it makes you wonder if this was the plan all along: give him a raise now, then keep him in stripes on the franchise tag next year. At the end of the day, if Hendrickson signs that tag, every single dollar, over $30 million, is guaranteed. And for a player who continues to be one of the most disruptive edge rushers in football, that's not only fair value, but it also buys the Bengals more time to figure out how Hendrickson fits into their long-term defensive blueprint. So when you step back and look at it, Trey Hendrickson's situation really gives the Bengals 2 clear paths. They can go the straightforward route, apply the franchise tag in 2026, and keep one of the league's top pass rushers in stripes for another year at around $30.2 million. That would effectively give Hendrickson the 2 years of security he was asking for, while giving the Bengals flexibility. But here's where it gets intriguing: there's always the possibility of a tag-end trade. We've seen Cincinnati use the tag before with T. Higgins to buy time, and in theory, they could do the same with Hendrickson. Lock him in, then flip him for draft capital if they feel the roster needs to pivot. It's not the most likely outcome, but it's a card the front office now has in its hand. And speaking of trades, let's not forget the reporting from Ian Rappaport. The Green Bay Packers were the team most aggressively inquiring about Hendrickson before his deal was finalized. At one point, talks reportedly involved star defensive tackle Kenny Clark. But Green Bay pulled back. They weren't ready to let go of Clark. Instead, they turned around and packaged him with 2 first-round picks to Dallas for Micah Parsons. That's how quickly the market shifted. From the Bengals' perspective, staying the course looks like the smarter play. They held on to Hendrickson, their most disruptive defender, while shoring up the defensive interior with Mike Pennell on a low-cost deal. And it's already paying off. Pennell graded out as one of the most efficient run-stoppers in Week 1, posting a 19% stop rate among defensive linemen with 20-plus snaps. That's veteran production at a bargain price. Compare that to Clark's contract, which balloons north of $20 million in the coming years, and it's hard not to view this as a win for Cincinnati. Instead of mortgaging the future or weakening their pass rush, the Bengals kept Hendrickson, found reliable depth inside, and maintained cap flexibility. In a league where one bad contract can sink a roster, this feels like the kind of front office discipline that keeps Cincinnati in contention, not just this season, but over the long haul.